Hello again everyone. Season 5 is right around the corner, and you are going to want a good league starter so you can get to the end game as soon as possible and start exploring all the new and exciting changes and added mechanics. For that, there are a few builds in my opinion better suited than Mind Control Youga. With strong single target and AoE damage, decent clear speed, and an incredibly straightforward gearing path, this build will serve you very well in your early days in the new league. Also very quickly, I have many more different builds that you might be interested in checking out if you are looking for a build to play in Season 5. So check out the playlist in the top right corner and subscribe to the channel for future content. Without any further ado, let's have a look at the details. Very quickly, for reference, the setup on this video reaches about 5 billion dummy DPS at level 90 without slates and a single candle, so it's in no way min-max or trying to mislead anyone. I just try to make a very basic setup of a character that is achievable in your first few days of the league. The gear has no tier 0 modifiers and at most 3 or 4 tier 1 modifiers, but you'll see that in the gear section, which we'll discuss right now. Starting with the few legendary pieces that we use, we make usage of a chest piece and boots. For the chest, Torchlight Vestments is a very powerful piece that will provide you with a lot of damage, active skill level and some added defensives in energy shield and a small portion of resistance. Also, it allows you to start your energy heat charge consistently, making for a nice defensive buffer against damage. It is, however, not mandatory, and you can easily replace it with a high energy shield piece that provides you with both higher defenses and potentially, when well crafted, offensive stats like Aura Effect and +2 to active skill levels. Your second and final piece of legendary gear are the King's Boon Boots, a fairly common pair that gives us a massive boost in damage, providing us with a passive 3 node, more with less, on top of also providing Reap, movement speed, and a decent amount of energy shield. If too expensive in the early days of the league, a rare piece with energy shield, movement speed, resistances, and an offensive stat like Aura Effect or Reap can hold you until you can get your hands on a pair of these. Also, with the new league, keep in mind, legendaries will be craftable depending on the number of aptitude the item has. So whenever looking to buy a piece, remember to check that when comparing prices. For the remainder of our gear, we'll employ rare pieces on all of them. This build will be one of the few rare situations where you want almost the same thing on all rare items, so look to prioritize the following. Get as much affliction effect as you possibly can on all your pieces of gear. This stat will be your highest scaling vector and should be highly prioritized. Coupled with that, you want to get as many plus levels as we can, to a soft cap of level 30. This will be available on your amulet, wands, and candles. This will be very high value, potentially even higher than affliction effect, but after your mind control reaches level 30, it will become less important due to the way it scales. The rest of your affixes should focus on capping your resistance, getting high energy shield, and when possible look to add Aura Effect for added damage and energy shield. For your weapons, look primarily to get high affliction effect and skill level for your mind control. This includes both erosion skill level and flat spell skill level. After those, dot damage, spell damage, rip effects are all great stats to get, but are a few orders of magnitude behind those two primary scalars. For special mods on some pieces that are worth looking out for, plus level on the amulet, as I said, is a very strong offensive mod. Less damage taken on low mana on your belt is great for your defenses since you are permanently on low mana. And if you are using a pair of rare boots, gaining deflection on movement is also a very solid defensive mod. For this build, your traits are very set in stone as there are very clear winners in the optional categories. Your level 25 and 60 points essentially add functionality to our trait, making it extend its duration when cast, record damage while it's out on the field, and deal said recorded damage back to enemies when they come in contact with our ground effect. Also, the longer twisted spacetime stays on the field, the more damage you will deal, so it's optimal to have 100% uptime on this. Our level 45 trait will be Spacetime Delay, granting us all the energy restoration we need to get said 100% uptime, as well as granting us a decent amount of additional dot damage. Our level 75 is Spacetime Cutting, a major damage increase allowing us to add a portion of the damage we inflict with RIP to the recorded damage of our trait. A simple trait that carries with it a massive part of our trait's damage. Finally, at level 90, we take Spacetime Upheaval, adding 1% of our energy shield to our spacetime energy. After that, for every 3 points of temporal energy we have, we'll gain 1% damage over time, turning our energy shield mods into a solid offensive mod as well, on top of the obvious already defensive value that they already provide. For your relic, look to try and get both additional damage over time and affliction per spacetime energy you have. If one of these can't be found, reaping cooldown recovery speed can also be employed here to good effect. On your memories, look to get a max roll of affliction effect and then a second node of either dot damage, reap added to spacetime turbulence, or even just energy shield can be used. The second mod on your memories can be flexed depending on the budget you are working with and later on upgraded, if necessary. For our passive tree, we use a very standard erosion dot setup with Goddess of Deception, Psychic and Shadow Master. With a more minimax setup, I do believe it is worth considering dropping Shadow Master for Warlock, where you would instead run Prelude for your first passive, and Off the Beaten Track for the second one. But I won't be covering that, as this video is meant to be a new season guide rather than a min-maxed one. As always, the full passive tree will be available on the builder in the description of this video, as I will only go over the major nodes of each tree in detail. For Goddess of Deception, our first node will be Windwalker, a very passive, solid offensive node, granting us 25 additional dot damage. The second node on this tree will be, by default, Forbidden Power, granting us a large buff to our erosion damage at the cost of some of our elemental resistance. If the elemental resistance is a problem, and you need to opt out of this node, then Subtle Impact can be employed, assuming you have a consistent way of generating blur, which you should do if you are using blurry steps, which we will talk about in our skill section. On the Psychic tree, Affliction is your first node, and it's entirely mandatory. 30% additional Affliction effect is too important to pass up on, and will be a major boost to your damage. The second node will once again be very set in stone, and will be Rip Purification, granting you the ability to settle 65% of the whole dot the enemy has. Even if you aren't using the boots, providing you with more with less, Rip Purification should still pull ahead here, although it might be worth testing it out for yourself. Finally, your last tree will be Shadow Master, and the first node you'll start taking will be Dirt, a simple node that grants you a moderate amount of damage. Keep in mind this was buffed to 15% on both the lines here, so it will be slightly better in the new season. After that, your second node will be Twisted Belief, granting you a massive +4 levels to erosion skill level at the cost of getting a 2-level penalty to any elemental skill levels you run. As we don't really make usage of any elemental skill levels, this negative has absolutely no impact on our setup. For your main skill, you should run Erosion Penetration, Passivation, Cataclysm, Guard, and Shortened Duration. All of these have the very simple effect of boosting our damage as high as possible, while Guard also provides us with a small but nice added defensive. We also make usage of a curse skill in Entangled Pain. We link it to Terrain of Malice to affect all enemies around us, working very well with the mind controlled playstyle. And finally, link it to Abyssal Hatred for the added effect. Our mobility skill will be blurry steps, granting us a lot of movement speed as well as the blur effect. We'll link it to mass effect and extended duration, granting us near permanent uptime on it. Our empower skills will be Star Stalker, linked to Well-Fought Battle, Mania, and extended duration. Our second empower skill will be Mana Boil, once again linked to Mania, Well-Fought Battle, Mass Effect, and finally Self-Sacrifice. For our auras, we run 3 auras with a very similar setup. Firstly, Energy Fortress, Deep Pain, and Erosion Enhancement are all linked to Selfishness, Stand as One, and Aura Amplification. Energy Fortress will also be linked to Seal Conversion to reserve it in our health. Our final and fourth aura is Magical Source, a very simple and easy way to fix our mana issues. In the new season, Elemental Resistance aura will once again grant us increases to elemental resistance rather than increasing their max, so it's worth considering this for this spot and try to fix your mana somewhere else. As I said, I don't run any slates on this character, however, you will want to look for as many level increases to your mind control as you can. Apart from that, Sealed Mana, Erosion Damage, Energy Shield, and generic dot or generic damage increases are all good stats to look for on basic slates. If you are looking at a pedigree of the gods, look for anything that grants us value. Good examples could be More with Less, Prelude, Off the Beaten Track, Subtle Impact, and I'm certain there are a few more at the very least. And that is everything I got for you today. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. Also, subscribe to the channel, as I will be pumping out content for the new season of Torchlight the moment it drops, including new builds, endgame passive trees, and many more. Thank you so much for supporting. I'll see you all later. Bye bye.